Welcome back to Multiverse Studios. Now, it's probably just me, but when I was growing up watching Yu-Gi-Oh!, I always felt kind of cheated that Joey Wheeler, one of the main protagonists alongside Yugi and Seto, didn't have any connection to ancient Egypt. Anyone else feel like that? Just me? Okay. Regardless, in this video I will be exploring what would have happened if Joey Wheeler did have an Egyptian counterpart. But before I do that, make sure you like and subscribe because we are so close
to 1,500 subscribers.
Before you guys say, but Joey not having any magical powers is what makes him so great in the first place, I just want to stop you right there, because I'm fully aware that having a connection to an ancient Egyptian counterpart and all the magical dueling advantages that come along with it go against Joey's core character design, which is meant to be more of a relatable, hard-working character. I even cover this in more depth in my video, Joey Wheeler is the greatest duelist in Yu-Gi-Oh!, which I also voice, so go check that out after this one. But now anyway, let's dive into this. First, I just want to establish that regardless of whether Joey is aware of his Egyptian counterpart or not, it will still definitely impact his life. One reference I want to use here is Seto Kaiba's duel against Ishizu. Now, if you know Seto Kaiba, you'll know that he's the last person to believe in magic or anything like that. However, in the duel, Seto subconsciously reacted to Marik's Millennium Rod, which was the item that belonged to Seto's Egyptian counterpart. Now, the important part from this is that Seto, after having the vision of Kisara and the Blue Eyes, could have easily chosen to ignore what he saw and continued his assault with Obelisk, which would have resulted in his defeat. However, what he sees from his Egyptian past influences his current decision. Kaiba is someone who strategizes and thinks up every duel and play beforehand, being someone who believes in skill more than fate. And for someone like him to change his strategy last minute and side with the visions he saw is a big deal. This just shows the kind of power a connection to ancient Egypt can have on an individual. This isn't even the only time this happens. We see these kind of interactions several times throughout the anime, where bonds formed thousands of years ago still connect characters in the present day. Now let's go back a few years or more to ancient Egypt and have a look at past Joey. Now, and admittedly this is speculation, in my opinion he wouldn't be any normal civilian. Absolutely not, what with the intense bond he has with present-day Yugi. I believe that would have been something that transcended through the years from friendship which was so strong that it's able to stand this test of time. And for that to happen, it would only make sense if Joey was a part of the 6 guardians that protected the pharaoh. It wouldn't have been easy to join the ranks of the pharaoh. After all, we see that even Seto, with the fortune of being tutored by Akhenaten, had to work extremely hard to attain the sorcery and magic necessary in order to be claimed worthy to wield the Millennium Rod and make his way into the inner circle. Very similar to how he actually became the CEO of Kaiba Corps and attained all the success he had worked so hard for. Joey, on the other hand, is not going to get any of these benefits. The key to his character is that he comes from a humble background. I think it's likely his admission would have been the result of a different approach, probably more accidental, in getting in the Pharaoh's favour and eventually becoming a guardian. If we look at the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime as it's presented to us, Joey Wheeler has a certain knack where once he sets his mind to something, regardless of how idiotic it is, he carries it out to the end. You can see it in his eyes. The determination and resolve is clear in most scenes. Joey follows his heart and immediately reacts to what he thinks is the right thing to do, regardless of the harm that could befall him. We can see this in Duelist Kingdom, and again in Battle City, when he throws himself in front of Mai quite happily just to shield her from the wrath of Ra, an Egyptian god. It's that selflessness too, these characteristics he holds that the pharaoh probably would have noticed in Joey on the streets of Egypt, maybe defending another civilian, which convinces Atem to give him a shot to see if he is worthy of the Millennium Item. On the administration of this test, Priest Seto would probably be ridiculing Joey, believing he's unfit to guard the pharaoh. A distaste for Joey, which would also transcend time to reach the modern day. However, it would probably be Shadar, the wielder of the Millennium Key, which has the power to look into a person's soul and review their worthiness. He would look into Joey's soul and be shocked at what he saw. You see, some individuals who have an incredibly strong Ba, which is the strength of their soul, can give rise to a Ka, the reflection of their soul, in a monster form, whether that be good or bad. Inside Joey, however, they saw the Red Eyes Black Dragon deep within him. In a similar manner to the Blue Eyes White Dragon, the Red Eyes Black Dragon was no ordinary dragon. In ancient times, Blue Eyes was on the same level as the gods of Egypt. As we saw, the White Lightning attack of one Blue Eyes went head to head with Obelisk's Fist of Fate attack, and it ended in a draw. So, similar to the Blue Eyes, the Black Dragon had its own legend and unknown strength. Being the rival to the mighty Blue Eyes, its power was fearsome. The Guardians would have been shocked in discovering this. As a Ka this powerful was incredibly rare. This, I think, represents the mighty potential Joey has deep within him. The Red Eyes Black Dragon, the Dragon of Potential. Now that we've established that Joey has both the power and qualities needed to become a Guardian, there's one more mystery remaining which we need to unravel, which is, what Millennium Item would Joey have possessed as a Guardian of the Pharaoh? Or should I say, which item would have chosen him? Now, if on TGS Anime's YouTube channel you've seen the video, The True Powers of the Millennium Items, he does a great job in describing all the powers of each one, especially the part where he describes the two categories the Millennium Items fall into: Justice, which contain the Millennium Scale, Necklace and Key, and those of Darkness, which are the Millennium Rod, Eye, and finally the Ring. Now, similar to how Blue Eyes and Red Eyes are yin and yang, I believe Seto and Joey also represent opposites of the same coin, and with Joey's heart being so pure and drawn towards the light, I believe we can safely narrow down the items he will use to the ones of justice. The Millennium Item I believe he would end up with is the Millennium Scale, which was originally wielded by Kareem. As to why I think this, well, the Millennium Scale has a few key abilities which resonate well with Joey's character. And yes, I'm aware that the abilities don't really necessarily need to match with Joey in any shape or form for it to choose him, however, this was the only way I could really make sense of it. Now, the Millennium Scale has the ability to judge a person's heart by being able to assess whether a person holds darkness within it. This is where we can draw our first similarity, as Joey is also a spectacular judge of character. An example of this being when Joey was the only person who suspected Namu, who was secretly Marek. In this same vein of ability, the scale can determine whether someone is being deceitful or is cheating, which is an ability which I believe would be invaluable to Joey, because talented as he is, he seems to be target to quite a lot of cheaters. And with Joey being as gullible as he is, seems to fall for it each time. A few examples of this being in Duelist Kingdom, where he almost loses to Mai due to a scented card trick, which nearly convinces Joey that she's psychic. And then again against Bandit Keith, who hides the cards in his sleeves in order to power up his slot machine. And then again in the Virtual World arc against Johnson, who controls the dice rolls. I mean, these are just a few instances in which Joey is easily hoodwinked by his opponents. Now, if he had the Millennium Scale, not one of those attempts would have worked on him. But perhaps most importantly, the most well-known ability the Millennium Scale has is its power to act as a polymerization spell card, as it can fuse any two monsters together. Now, as to why I think this fits with Joey so perfectly, is because it goes back to my point about Red Eyes being the dragon of potential. Red Eyes doesn't have that same incredible attack strength that Blue Eyes has, which is why it's only able to unlock its true power elsewhere. And one of those sources is through the power of fusion and melding with other monsters, something Blue Eyes isn't able to do. You see examples of this time and time again, where Red Eyes is a means to boost another creature in terms of their attack power. So, this would go perfectly with Joey as a way to use Red Eyes to the best of its potential. But then again, if you guys have a different interpretation of what Millennium Item would suit Joey the best, let us know down in the comments below. Now let's bring it all back around, and have a look at the drastic changes having an Egyptian counterpart would have on Joey in the present day anime. Well, for one thing, the duel between Marek and Joey would have been incredibly different. You see, the main reason Marek is able to defeat Joey was through his attempt to drain Joey and sap out all his strength. Now this was only effective as Joey, as a normal duelist, is completely vulnerable to shadow magic. However, having an Egyptian counterpart would mean that Joey's inner strength and resistance to shadow magic would be incredibly high, as his past self would have dueled in many shadow games, meaning Joey would not have passed out during the duel. Now, I can't outright say that Joey would have won that duel, since Marek chose that strategy fully aware that Joey was vulnerable to the Shadow Realm. If Marek knew he had a connection to his ancient Egyptian self, there's a pretty high chance Marek would have played that duel incredibly differently. However, let's say Joey did defeat Marek. Wouldn't that have been amazing? He plays Gearfried the Iron Knight and attacks Marek for game, and then he would have been the one to own the Winged Dragon of Ra. The rest of Battle City would have been between Yugi, Seto, and Joey, all possessing an Egyptian god card each, and because of his Egyptian counterpart, Joey would have been able to access the full power of Ra. Similar to how Seto managed to read the card text of Ra, which were written in Egyptian hieroglyphics, Joey would have had the same ability, and therefore would have known the ancient chant. Now for me this makes perfect sense, as in the same way Joey, Yugi, and Seto would have owned an Egyptian god card each here, in the Waking the Dragon arc, where there were 3 heroes chosen which could wield the 3 dragons, Timaeus, Hermos, Critias, Joey was one of them, wielding the Claw of Hermos. The reason I liked this arc so much was that Joey was one of the warriors in his own right, which had nothing to do with Yugioh Seto. So I think having a pattern like this, where Joey is included as part of the main trio in his own right, and on his own merits, would be an interesting concept, instead of his arc being a side quest while he helps Yugioh accomplish his goals. I think giving Joey an Egyptian counterpart would have been a great way to achieve this in the long run. Alright, well, that's my take on Egyptian Joey. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.